Hello, my name is Teresita Blanco, the Artsy Sister, and we're continuing with the Lover's Pentacle. This is chapter 4, Six of Cups. Even if she got married to another, Kain hoped that she would remain part of his life. When he arrived home, he saw Jack's humble little Mini Cooper parked outside. Sitting inside waiting to build up courage was Jack. Kain parked beside the car and he noticed that his father was crying while talking to himself. Kain worried tapped on the window. Jack rolled it down and he said, trembling, "Is there a problem, officer?" "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle, sir," said Kain. My son lives here," protested Jack, and I am, "Oh, Kain, hi." "You can come inside," said Kain, opening the front door. And he was about to add, "Don't steal anything," but he chose not to. "Kain, welcome home," said Esther, hugging her favorite grandson. The smile immediately faded away when she saw the beautiful creature standing behind him. "It's fine, Grandma," said Kain. "And he bought me a new game, and inviting him over for a nice home-cooked meal is the least I can do to repay him." Jack entered the house uncertain. He had always seen the place from the outside, but never the interior. This house was emptier than Jack had expected. Like Kent, Jack assumed that the house belonged to his mother, Esther. Kain had bought the house with his grandma's help. The grandma had provided the down while Kain paid for everything else, including the utility bills. The room decor contrasted with the cluttered mess that was Esther's true home. Esther was a bit of a hoarder, and her garage was filled with everything, including all of her children's schoolwork, family albums, their toys, clothing, as well as a colony of roaches living inside the mess. Since Kain owned the property, his grandma had placed him in charge of the decor. Kain wasn't too fussy with the look as long as the furniture was cheap and comfortable, and he had gone for a milky white color for all of the furniture, following the trends he had seen in the fixer-upper. He only had two televisions, a flat big-screen TV in the living room and a photo TV in his bedroom. From the open living room, the house flowed towards the dining room and the small remodeled kitchen. Kain's home had 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, though one bedroom was technically a garage turned into a bedroom, and there was the bedroom Esther slept in when she visited, as well as a second guest room with a sofa bed instead of a bed. Kain began dinner while he did, Esther silently judged her good-for-nothing son, Jack. To break the silence, Kain turned on the TV and he handed the remote control to Esther. Esther began to flip through all of the channels of Kain's hack cable service. A movie was eventually found and it helped dissipate some of the darkness. Come 7, dinner was served. With Jack visiting, Kain made his father his favorite meal, spaghetti with bacon. Kain sliced up some hard bread in order to reheat it and garnish it, and when it came out, the old bread had transmuted into garlic bread. "I don't have beer, but I can get you a soda. Orange juice, maybe some carbonated water," said Kain, opening the fridge. "Soda is fine, thank you," said Jack politely. When the food was placed before Jack, he proceeded to munching it before it got cold, and Kain normally talked during his meal, but instead he focused on eating. Esther couldn't believe her eyes. Father and son were eating together at the same table. It had been ages since Kain had tolerated his father's presence. Kain was still uncertain about the situation, and at the moment he wasn't angry or sad because of his father's presence. This was a good thing. He didn't want to continue feeling those negative emotions if he could help it. Kain looked at his scrawny father, and he fancied that his presence would be tolerable if he thought of Jack as his little brother. "You smell a little funny," said Jack, sniffing Kain. Jack was already far too full to take in another bite. "Some of the guys mentioned that when I got back," said Kain, smelling his uniform. "I need to get changed and shower after I rest my foot." Kain drew closer and he smelled Kain's hair, and nodding happily he said, "I recognize that smell. It's Rifa." "Rifa," repeated Esther, worried. "It's just a cigar brand," lied Jack. "It is no different than those Camels you smoke when nobody's looking." "You can't prove that I still smoke," said Esther defensively. "Whatever it was, the restaurant stunk of it," said Kain. "But at least the food was delicious, even if it was all vegan." Kain looked at his phone and he noticed that he had 17 messages from Eugenia, and they were all different versions of the same command. She wanted Kain to drop everything and investigate her mother's illness. Kain was about to tell her to bother someone else, but even that seemed like too much of a bother. The problem was that the psycho bitch knew where he lived. Kain reluctantly went to his room to get started on the little side project. "And what are you doing now?" asked Jack, looking over Kane's shoulder. "A random woman asked me to find some dirt on her mom," said Kain. "Did she promise to pay you?" asked Jack. "No," said Kain, pouting. "But she knows where I live, and I do not want any more problems from her psychotic parents and their lawyers." "Let me help you with that problem, son," said Kain, handing a towel to Kain. Go take your shower." Kain stripped out of his officer uniform and he finally took his shower. And while he showered, Jack took Kain's cell phone and he found Eugenia's number and he marked that wench as spam. And he also marked as spam a couple of unfamiliar numbers. Jack then left the room and he informed his grandma of the problem called Eugenia. "Those two haven't even made it and she's already asking for big favors, Mama." "That Eugenia's nothing but bad news," said Jack. "And Kain is going to get in trouble because of that mush." "Takes one to know one," retorted Esther dryly. "Still, this whole evil stepmom scenario is a little too cliché for it to be true, and Eugenia might be a user, and her parents restricting her finances is for a good reason." And once Kain was relaxed, he lay down on his bed to read a book, and he looked at his cell phone for a second, and he realized the type of help that Jack had offered. After thinking things through for a bit, he realized that Jack was right about Eugenia. She was nothing but trouble. Kain shouldn't be eager to help a bimbo that he met less than a day ago. A torrential rain began to fall, and Jack made a motion to leave under the stormy weather, but his mother Esther insisted that he stay the night. The morning came, and much to Esther's surprise, everything was where it should be, and she was even more surprised to see that Jack was getting dressed for work. "I wasn't lying about having a real job," said Jack. "I'm really trying to do things right this time." "I believe you, Jackie," lied Esther, hugging her son. Jack smiled sadly, and he could always tell when his mother was lying. Jack walked to his car, and he attempted to turn it on, and since it kept stalling, Kain gave his father a little lift to work. Jack nervously got inside the patrol car, and the two rode out in utter silence. Jack looked at the laptop on the dashboard. "If you want to see your criminal record, you do not need to ask for my permission," said Kain, turning the laptop to face his father. "Only do not ask me too many questions because I get distracted if people talk to me while I'm driving." Jack gave a cursory review of his record, and from there he began to amuse himself by looking at the criminal records of people he went to high school with. After a 20-minute ride, Kain arrived at the used car store. Kain left the police car clutching his briefcase for dear life, and Kain stopped him and he made Jack hold the briefcase like a normal person. Kain straightened his father's tie and he combed his hair with his saliva. "Just because your friend got you a job doesn't mean that you can slack off, and as long as you look busy and professional, you're going to be able to retain this job for years to come. And if you need to boost yourself, don't forget Craigslist exists," said Kain. "And if you start talking to yourself, put yourself onto your ear, this will make you look less like a crazy person." "I don't listen to voices if that's what you're implying," retorted Jack. "It is just when nobody's around my apartment I have gotten into the habit of speaking my thoughts out loud. I can't live by myself, Kain. I'm just not used to it. I don't like it." "Then go back to Uncle Gen's house," said Kain. "I can't. His wife hates me," said Jack, and Nathan is apparently staying in Abu Dhabi forever, and Elizabeth doesn't have room for me in her New York shoebox apartment, and..." "So that just leaves me then," said Kain, rubbing his temple. "I don't have time to deal with your nonsense, Dad. Go to work and call me when you get fired." Kain got in the car and he drove away from the situation, and once he got to the first red light, he punched the dashboard while cursing. Kain saw the light turn green, and he pressed down the gas pedal. He didn't get far before a speeding vehicle T-boned him. His patrol car rolled and rolled as his life flashed before his eyes. And the vehicle that struck him drove backwards and fled the crime scene. And it was one thing to T-bone a random car, it was another matter to crash into a police officer's car. Kain was hanging upside down, tied by the seatbelt, and he could smell the gasoline. It was only a matter of time before the car would explode, and Kain went to remove his seatbelt, but at the last moment he chose not to. He closed his eyes while he waited to leave this cruel world behind with a big bang. And this plan was short-lived. Kain heard the footsteps of someone rushing over and frantically opening the door. "Help, help! Somebody call the police! Somebody call an ambulance!" yelled Jack hysterically, while he struggled with the seatbelt. Kain wearily stopped playing possum and he reached for the seatbelt, and one of the drivers that had stopped reached from the other side of the patrol car to help drag Kain out of the vehicle, and not a moment too soon. The patriarchal exploded in a spectacular fashion. Careful with his head, said Jack while his son was slowly being carried to the sidewalk. And don't worry, son, the ambulance is coming. You're gonna be alright. Okay? Everything's going to be okay. I'm fine, said Kain, sitting up, and the mere eye made him dizzy as the world started spinning around him, and he leaned forward and he rested his head on his hand. It will pass, son, said Jack, patting Kain's back. And you're in shock. You're alright. Everything's fine. Okay? Kain began to collapse again, only this time Jack was nearby to offer his lap as cushion. Weary of the effort of struggling against destiny, Kain accepted the help from the father he didn't want. The man who had assisted Jack handed Kain his revolver, and it wouldn't do well for it to be lying around in the pavement for a random person to pick it up. Jack stashed it in his coat pocket before immediately forgetting that it was there. The ambulance came. Instead of going to the hospital, Kain asked to be taken to IFA America. Karina's mother Unla worked there, and she would be able to give him an MRI at a cheaper value. And while the two waited, Kain started feeling a little better, in part thanks to the first aid he had received in the ambulance. His head was bandaged up, and the cut he had received on his wrist had been treated. Dad, your hand is burned, said Kain, looking at Jack's hand. I didn't notice. When the car exploded, I used my hand to protect my face. A medical assistant sent by Unla summoned the two to her office, and an ointment was applied to Jack's burned hand, and it was bandaged up. And it was a good thing too. Now that Jack was aware of the burn, it hurt like bloody hell. After removing all of the metal from his uniform, Kain got inside the MRI. There was no concussions or brain damage. Unla noticed the purple bruise on Kain's left hand. The car had struck him from the driver's seat, and X-rays showed that there were no broken bones. Unla provided an unbracer and some ice to reduce the swelling, and they were then released from the clinic with all of their boo-boos treated. While the two waited for Karina to pick them up, the two spoke. Kain first. Dad, why didn't you love me when I was small? You rarely spent any time with me. I was working. I couldn't keep an eye on the baby while trying to compose music. And if I wasn't playing with you all the time, you would throw yourself into hysterics, said Jack, scratching his hair. I just didn't know how to manage. I didn't have any experience taking care of children, and I was just a child myself. I was only 12 when you came into this world, Kain. And when Mom took you to live with her, it was a relief, and I no longer needed to be responsible for you. If you didn't want me, asked Kain, starting to cry, why did you bother to save me? I'm sorry, said Jack, realizing the terrible thing he had just said. I didn't mean it. Karina arrived around noon to take Kain home, and she found Kain crying next to a creepy singing man. Kain saw Karina, and he went to cry on her shoulder. The girl guessed that her boyfriend was still a little shaky from the accident. Karina turned to look at the news, and there was a helicopter view of the accident as well as some eyewitness reports of the heroic rescue. Karina walked Kain to her car while he kept crying uncontrollably, and she was about to drive away when Kain noticed that there was somebody missing. Taking control of his emotions, Kain said, You forgot my father. Karina returned to the clinic, and she looked about for someone that resembled Kain. It was then when the thin man approached her. Jack was clutching nervously the end of his button shirt, and since the man was following her, Karina guessed that this lanky creature was Kain's father. He was not what Karina had imagined. Kain looked at his phone and he said, This thing has been vibrating for hours. I think it is broken. When it vibrates, it means that you're getting a call, said Karina. Is this your first cell phone? Hand it over, Dad, said Kain, gesturing his hand. And we better not distract Karina while she's driving, and put your seatbelt on. Karina and Jack buckled up, and Kain tested to his Uncle Gan that he was fine. The patrol had exploded, but he did not. Kain took a selfie with the phone, and he sent it as a visual confirmation that he was more or less in one piece. Karina arrived to Kain's house, and he looked for his housekeeper. He found when he realized that they had blown up with the car. Jack, realizing the problem, removed one of his hairpins. After breaking it up, Jack was able to pick the locks and were able to enter within the house. Kain went to the beeping house alarm, and he tried to type in the password. With his head still foggy, he kept getting the 4-key combination wrong. Jack, after thinking for a second, typed in Raphael's birthday, and this made the alarm stop beeping. I want to stay, said Karina, but I have finals in 2 hours, and I really need to get back to school. And as soon as I finish, I'm coming back, I promise. Are you going to be okay, Kain? With my father taking care of me, everything's going to be alright, said Kain, giving a fake smile. Karina couldn't tell if Kain was being serious or sarcastic, and she looked at the time, and in the end her ambitions dictated her priorities. Karina drove back to school in order to finish her finals, and with her gone, Kain went to collapse on the couch. Jack went to the bathroom, and he came back with a cold, moist towel, and he placed it over Kain's eye before sitting nearby. I have a proposition for you, said Kain. I am going to let you live with me as long as you don't cause me problems. I am willing to tolerate your presence. Do you really mean that, Kain? Asked Jack, smiling happily. You better get your things before I change my mind, said Kain, and go to work already. Jack lingered in the house till Karina returned from her exams, and with someone keeping an eye on the big baby, Jack went to his car and he turned on without a problem. Jack drove to his workstation and he reported to his boss the reason why he had been extremely late for his first day at work. The remaining 2 hours passed without incident. Jack mentioned the existence of Craigslist, and this became his new role in the company. It was his task to take photographs of the cars and create listings for it on Craigslist. Jack's boss was a failed drummer that insisted on being called by his station name Arjuna, and they only needed a failed vocalist and a songwriter in order to form a new rock, and a singer and a songwriter and a drummer in order to form a new rock band. Jack returned to his Plan 8 apartment in Opaloka. He frowned when he noticed that somebody had broken into his home again, and this was another reason why he wanted to move out. Jack cautiously opened the door, and he saw that the thief was still there, tearing at the floor and walls looking for anything of value. He tiptoed to his neighbor's house, and he knocked a few times in Morse code. His good neighbor allowed Jack to hide out there until the thief left. His neighbor and landlord was an old man in a wheelchair, and he would allow Jack to visit whenever he was feeling particularly bored or lonely. If your brother's a police officer, why don't you call him? Asked the good neighbor. I just don't want to cause him any problems, said Jack, and while I'm here, I wanted to terminate my lease. I am moving in with my son. There are penalties for early termination, started saying the landlord before laughing, and he added, I'm just messing with you. I will wait a few months before getting a new tenant, and just in case your son throws you out of the house. That won't happen, said Jack. We have come to an understanding. The noise in the other apartment went away, and Jack breathed in a sigh of relief. And just when the coast seemed clear, the door was kicked down, and at that moment Jack regretted not calling the cops. The thief was screaming hysterically, punching Jack and the harmless old man, and he dragged the tenant by the hair, and he demanded that he show him the money. And Jack was lying on his side, and when Jack was lying on his side, he felt something hard and metallic pressing against his side. And when his hand reached for it, he saw that he had Kain's revolver. And with a trembling hand, Jack brandished the revolver, and the thief took a cautious step back, and another, and then he fled the apartment to avoid getting shot at. If you had that revolver, you should have brought it out sooner, complained the landlord. I don't know about you, but I'm calling the cops, and help me back on the wheelchair. Jack assisted the young man to get on the wheelchair, and once everything was in working order, Jack returned to his small apartment. Everything was a mess, and Jack called his brother again to inform him that he had gotten robbed again. Ken held his hand over his chest, and he just couldn't handle more bad news today. Like the guy was like, ah. And don't forget that, like, Ken's father, Raphael, had already died of a heart attack, so he'd be like, oh my god, I'm heading in this direction because of this stress of these lunatics driving me mad. Ken sent over the night guards to investigate the robbery, and before taking an aspirin as a preventive measure, Jack looked through his apartment and he picked up a few articles of clothing, the guitar he had hidden inside the roof, his pillow, and the cash inside the toilet bowl. The rest Ken could send for or sell it. Jack closed the door, locked the door before heading out, and then he drove back to Kain's house. During the time Jack had been away, Kain had been considering telling his father to go to hell, and when he saw him return all beaten up, Kain softened up. And the night was spent with Jack ranting about getting mugged by an addict. I guess I finally got a taste of my own medicine, Kain said, Jack laughing nervously. I need your help in the kitchen, said Kain, changing the subject. And just like that, Kain and Jack started to reconnect with one another, whether they wanted to or not. And acting as a mediator for the two was Grandma Esther. and she had heard from Kain that Jack was going to be moving into his home, and she was uncertain about the situation, but she felt that this was how things should have always been. Alright, that's the end of that chapter. Bye-bye and God bless.